Hey guys, LuckyHD here, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the newest Tanorian Hallusion, and all of its inspirations, and what led up to actually making this Tanorian. If you guys do enjoy this video, go down there, like, subscribe, and let's get straight into it. Alrighty, so this is something that I kind of wanted to do, obviously, because, number one, there were some people suggesting that, hey, you should maybe do a series talking about your Tanorians, the process in actually creating them, and of course, showing the, process just during the entire thing, modeling it, and all of that stuff. Now, obviously, in the past, I've done a live stream, creating a Tanorian, and that was for Babites, but I figured, it'd be more interesting to actually make a video going in depth on what it took to actually create this Tanorian design. And the one, of course, that I have is the shiny version of it, but the one that we're going to be talking about is, of course, going to be the regular version of Hallusion. The next entry for Hallusion states, a failed fossil restoration brought back this Tanorian along with a strain of the virus which wiped out its species. This Tanorian secretes a hallucinogenic toxin on its body to defend against predators. Anything coming in contact with the toxin will fall into a trance-like state and hallucinate apparitions and twisted visions of their future. Now, what exactly is Hallusion? Obviously, it is a very, very goofy design, and it is unlike anything that is currently inside of Tales of Tanorio. Well, Hallusion is actually based on the Hallucigenia, which is a Cambrian worm species that, of course, is now extinct. Now, of course, if you're an animal and history nerd like myself, you would probably know of the Hallucigenia as what it is, alright? However, the actual design inspiration and a lot of the elements for Hallusion actually come from Attack on Titan. And this really comes as a trend of just me kind of creating Tanorians and designs and stuff like that based on just certain things that I like in media, okay? I mean, we got Fordrake over here, right? Fordrake is actually based on Chainsaw Man. And obviously a lot of the elements of it might not be apparent at first, but I mean, you look at the head and how the head is, it's pretty similar to Chainsaw Man's head. If you look at the arms being swords and all that stuff, well, the inspiration for that came off of also Chainsaw Man. And then you have other Tanorians like Terror and that entire line, which is based off of Darth Vader and Anakin and all of that stuff, and I've made an entire video about that separate as well, but let's talk about Hallusion. Now, again, Hallusion is based on the Hallucigenia, but more specifically the Hallucigenia that is found in Attack on Titan. And of course, I'll try to do my best to explain, stuff and certain elements for people who haven't seen Attack on Titan, but obviously if you are planning to watch it one day, this is your spoiler warning right here, because I am going to be spoiling some parts of Attack on Titan. Alright, so we start out and we follow this girl right here, and her name is Ymir. Now, Ymir is being chased because she let a couple pigs out of a pen, and the entire village snitched on her. So then, after being followed, she eventually decides to walk into this giant tree that has a huge chasm in the middle of it. Now, this tree is actually what you see inside of the lab, to an extent. It's a reference, okay? And while she's in the tree, she ends up falling down and lands in a huge pit of water. And now, inside of this pit of water, a giant creature that resembles a Hallucigenia actually ends up bonding with her spine, and using the power of whatever this thing is, it ends up creating the first Titan. Now, in the manga, the Hallucigenia is known as the first animal, and it's known as life basically, when, I mean, this is not really true. It wasn't the first animal, and also doesn't really give life to much except some modern day velvet worms, but that's besides the point. We're talking about the anime and the manga here. And the same king that ordered her to actually be hunted down now decides to use her in the war because he realizes how important she can be, and then later decides to impregnate her. Now, she ends up having 3 kids with the king, and one day somebody just decides to assassinate the king. She jumps in front of it to save him because I mean, she's delusional, I'm not gonna lie. Then the king, after, says to the 3 kids, hey, cannibalize your dead mother. And then those kids each inherit the Titan powers, which then they put off to their offsprings, and basically it gets divided in 3. So she gets the power of 9 Titans, Ymir, and then her 3 kids get 3 of the Titan powers, and then their kids, it just keeps going down, right? To the point where eventually there are 9 separate kids, and people who have the power of the Titan. And every 13 years, they died, because that is the curse of Ymir. After she got her Titan power, 13 years later, she died. So now, every time there is a person who actually has the power of the Titans, they die 13 years later. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, but basically 2,000 years later, after, again, constantly just cycling over, every 13 years, new Titan, new Titan, new Titan, new Titan, new Titan, eventually, it gets to Eren Yeager. Now, Eren Yeager, again, go watch the show if you want to learn more about that, I'm not gonna lie. But basically, he's the Attack Titan of this generation, and with one of the Attack Titans, powers, they can see into the future. And Eren essentially sees himself murdering 80% of the population, just committing a mass genocide. And throughout the show, he's kind of just, in disbelief with it, and he's like, no, I can change my future, right? So that right there is where we get into our first little thing with Hallusion's inspiration. Yes, this is still a Tales of Tanorio video, by the way. So, Hallusion's next entry, obviously, as I read earlier, talks about, the hallucinogenic properties of it, and it actually making it so that you can see into the future. Now, Hallusion is actually based on, obviously, the hallucigenia from Attack on Titan, and the hallucinogenic properties that the Titan power ends up giving, obviously to the Attack Titan, but the actual design of Hallusion is based on Eren Yeager, more kind of specifically when Eren turns into his, final Titan form, and he has all of his, long hair in front of his face, because that's when Eren's Attack Titan and, the founding Titan powers kind of just get mixed together, as well as the Warhammer, and he ends up becoming this just giant thing that is also based off of a hallucigenia, by the way, and that is where a lot of this right here, the spikes, actually come from. On Eren Yeager's kind of final Titan form, you end up obviously seeing this entire thing that, is a very crazy design to look at, and definitely terrifying, but that is what I referenced right here with all of these spikes on the back of it, obviously again being from Eren Yeager, and then of course you have the legs. Now, if you've seen the final form of Eren's Titan, he kind of has these, really disproportionately small legs on the back of it, and I really wanted to do that with the design. Have, this really long hallucigenia kind of thing, and then have these little legs. And a lot of people were saying, oh, well, why doesn't it have a tail, or why is it, why is it not, more serpenty? This is why. Now, when Eren actually has the power of the Founding Titan and the Attack Titan and all that stuff, he can, basically speak to every Eldian. Again, if you don't know what that is, that's so much more to explain, but essentially he ends up giving each one of his friends a private little conversation that all happens at once right before he dies, by again projecting these hallucinations into their head of a conversation that they would have with each other and all that stuff. Basically reasoning with the fact of what he did and why he did what he did to save them, murdering 80% of the world's population so they could be free, but, And that is where the hallucinations part of Hallusion actually comes into. I know, there is a lot to this design, and you kind of look at Hallusion and you're like, oh, well, it doesn't seem that complicated, but this is genuinely what I was thinking of when I was actually creating the design and the concept for this. So, obviously that is all the Attack on Titan stuff. Now, for the more Tanorian side of things, I was approached by Physics, one of our PvP balancers, to basically create a Psychic and Poison type, because he has this little trio in mind, and yes, Hallusion is going to be part of a trio of stuff. And again, yeah, it was going to be a Psychic and Poison type, so that's when I started doing my research and all that stuff, and it had to be it had to be a fossil and all that stuff, and it also had to be based off of a status condition, so I went with the hallucigenia, and obviously, toxic, poison and all that stuff for the status condition, and that is what led to the creation of Hallusion. Now, obviously there's some people, Hallusion may not be everybody's cup of tea. It is definitely such a extremely goofy design, but how I like to look at it, I appreciate both the really cool designs and I appreciate the very goofy designs, because I'm somebody obviously who's created Fordrake and Climitten and obviously Hallusion and all these other Tanorians, and I think at the end of the day, it's really a balance that I like to keep, even within myself, not creating quote-unquote cool Tanorians 24/7. I think as a concept artist, as a designer for stuff like this, I think you definitely have to think outside the box a lot of times, and if you get stuck in a niche of just creating nothing but cool things 24/7, you start creating Fordrake after Fordrake after Fordrake, at what point does it start becoming repetitive? You know what I mean? I think it's really important as, being a concept artist to actually expand out your ideas and take risks with designs and stuff like that. Even if you know that, hey, maybe not a lot of people are going to like it. But for the, people that can appreciate goofy designs and stuff like that, I definitely think, obviously, they will find it enjoyable. And that's what I make it for, and I also make it for myself because I like designing things. But yeah, Hallusion, a very, very complicated Tanorian, probably one of the most complicated Tanorians in the game in terms of inspiration and lore and all that stuff. But let me know your thoughts about Hallusion down in the comments below, and if I should do more of these videos about other Tanorians, because I really like geeking out, obviously, about the stuff that I make. I get really excited, when I actually have a way to talk about this stuff, because I'm proud of it personally. What can I say? I think it's pretty cool what I do. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, obviously. And one thing I forgot to mention, didn't even bring this up in the video. Shiny Hallusion is actually based off of the original Hallucigenia from Attack on Titan. You know, the big blue worm. That's why the shiny's blue. So, there you go. Final little, like, factoid right there. But yeah, again, let me know your thoughts about Hallusion, obviously, down in the comments below. Let me know if I should, you know, keep doing these types of videos. Again, I really enjoy doing these myself, but I'm curious as to what you think about them. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.